Hey, yeah, this is Sydney, and I am here to talk us through it for the astrology of July 2nd through July 8th, 2025. I'm recording this on July 1st, just a little bit before 11 a.m., and it's Cancer season. We are definitely having a highlight of wherever the sun in Cancer is lighting up your chart. Uh, and that's where we're probably looking to take a little bit more care, consideration, nurturing, to find a sense of home and belonging. Now, I think that July 2nd, today, for all intents and purposes, whenever I say today, I'm talking about the day that I'm talking about, and I will have the chart up as well, uh, is a day where we have the ability to talk about the ways that we're feeling, and that is because we have this moon sextile Mercury action that's happening at 3:29 a.m. However, we do have a void of course beginning at 12:29 a.m. and it's going to fulfill the whole day. So, again, to just kind of revise or to go over what a moon in void is, it can be a time of, reflection, a time where we're feeling a little floaty, dreamy, untethered. And it's not necessarily a time to take primary new actions that we have not taken before. The aspects for today, the major one is that we have the first quarter square between the moon and the sun, and this is going to be happening at the 11th degree. So the moon is in Libra and that sun in Cancer. And so we need to kind of think back to what our new moon intentions was or were. Our new moon intentions in Cancer around care, consideration, comfort, security, safety, home, nurturing, family, that sort of thing. And that new moon happened at a certain point of our chart. And now we're having a little bit of friction or tension from the square from the moon saying, hey, we need to take some sort of action in order to fulfill this promise that or this intention that we have set for ourselves, whether that was consciously or unconsciously. Later on in the day, we do have some pretty finicky, cranky aspects. The moon is going to sesqui square Venus and Uranus, which are very, very close to their conjunction, causing a sense of frustration, right? Kind of hitting your head against the wall, especially when it comes to maybe things around relationship or finances, beauty, our needs, right? And also the kinds of ideas and the ways that we want to liberate ourselves and to break through and break free of whatever the issues that we have in our life. Venus and Uranus are going to make a conjunction in just a few days' time, fulfilling, that process and also promise of liberating something around the Venusian topics. In the evening at 11:44 p.m., we do have the Mars in Virgo biquintiling Pluto in Aquarius. I think that this aspect is kind of interesting because it kind of gives us, I think, a desire to go a little bit deeper into our desire nature and also the things that we really are almost a little bit obsessed about. This could have to do with communication or the type of work and service that we're trying to do in order to serve our communities. And by community, I mean like how we want to show up in the world, right? And how we want to make our mark in the world. It's not a bad aspect. The biquintile isn't necessarily always acknowledged, especially in traditional astrology, but it is an interesting aspect to kind of end the day on. These are slower moving planets with Mars biquintile. Pluto is going to hold into the next day as well. Going into July 3rd, which is Thursday and Jupiter's day, just paying attention to Jupiter and what it's doing today, we still have Jupiter extremely combust within 7 degrees of the sun. So we still have a few more days until we kind of get to maybe see what the promise of Jupiter in Cancer is in our charts. So Jupiter is quote unquote blessing the Cancer portion of our charts. You want to look where that is in yours to see where there's going to be some sort of expansion and growth that perhaps felt a little bit more restrained, especially because it was receiving that square from Saturn. And also, it has been very combust with the sun. There's not a lot of aspects today. In fact, the moon is void all day today. So even though the moon is making these like quintiles and biquintiles to Mercury, Venus, and Uranus, we're not getting a lot of action. We're not necessarily getting to make a lot of headway in the concrete sort of things that we're trying to do. But, the quintile to Mercury, Venus, and Uranus can feel kind of pleasant, um, wanting to harmonize, to make good, to, engage in relationship that feels nice. And potentially there could be some new ideas kind of forming and sparking, but they are not necessarily coming to a full force realization yet. We have a cranky aspect from the moon semi-square Mars in Virgo at 3:20 p.m., which to me kind of feels like, you're trying to work hard and do all of the things you need to do, Mars and Virgo, working hard, right, to kind of perfect whatever your plans or goals or desires are. And there's some sort of way that, the moon in Libra wants to communicate and to connect with others, and they're not quite jiving, but you can't necessarily quite put a finger on it, right? The biggest aspect of the day is at 8:10 p.m. when we have the moon in Libra opposing that Chiron in Aries, which can probably feel like our wounds are exposed inside of relationships. Maybe we're feeling unsupported. Maybe we're feeling a bit out of sorts, unable to reconcile the ways that we feel our, fear around the ways that we are being able to express ourselves or to be in relationship with others. So I just think that this brings a extra heightened awareness of our sensitivities and where our issues lie, right? Especially in relationships. Going into July 4th, happy birthday, America. That is a Friday, Venus's day. We do have Venus's ingress into Gemini today, but not before she has a nice little meeting with Uranus at the very last anaretic degree, 29 degrees and 52 minutes. So that there's like an ending, a finality, a sudden change or transmutation or liberation from something that we were holding around the Venusian things, whether it is our ideas about how money should operate or how we want to feel safe and secure in our relationships, and maybe even something about the feminine principle, how we feel beautiful, how we feel sensual. There is a change here, right? There could be some sort of disruption collectively around money, Venus and Taurus. Taurus signs can be all about money and all about like the earth. So this ending degree can feel very immediate, very much like an emergency. We have to change. We have to change now. And in fact, we are being kind of forced into that change. Now, right after that, Venus goes into Gemini. And this is in the morning. Where is that? Yeah, this is in the morning. So now we're going to get a vibe shift around how we are social and connecting with others, right? The kind of Venusian, how we feel pleasantries. Venus and Taurus wants to lay in a field and, be a cow, eat its grass, gaze at the stars. And a Venus in Gemini now becomes flirty, conversational. The way that it wants to connect with others is through like inquisitive, curious conversation and speaking and talking and processing. It's very flirty. And I do very, very much like that. Venus in Gemini is going to be ruled by that Mercury in Leo. So there could be kind of a egocentric bit to how we want to communicate in flirty ways, what we're trying to get from others. It is a sign-based sextile, which is really can be very pleasant and supportive. But still, I think this has to do with, around the kind of care and consideration that we want to get from others in relationships and how we're willing to go about and getting it. There's a lot of aspects that the moon is going to make after the void of course ends, and that's going to be at 2:33 a.m. when the moon goes into Scorpio. So even though we have Venus in a lovely, fun, flirtatious sign, now we have a pretty significant vibe shift with the moon going into Scorpio, protective, um, can be a bit manipulative, feeling really intense and critical. The feelings become kind of pointed more inside. We want to kind of crawl into the skin of others. The moon in Scorpio is a very intimate moon. We have some frustrating aspects from the moon. 6:20 a.m. and 6:57 a.m. First, the moon is going to conjunct Saturn. So there's some sort of, kind of abrupt shift or adjustment that we need to make in how we are feeling and how we're feeling maybe this really kind of intense and critical feeling around what kinds of work that we're trying to do, the goals that we're trying to complete. Maybe there's a sense of pressure that we're feeling, and so we need to make some sort of adjustment. And then again, Neptune is going to kind of force another adjustment upon the moon, saying, maybe you need to adjust like the dream or the vision that you had around the work you're trying to do or the realities that you're trying to lay down. That Saturn Neptune conjunction is going to perfect, I believe, just this next year. I think in like February. Don't quote me on that, but it is very, very close to a conjunction right now, with it being at 1 degrees 52 minutes and 2 degrees 10 minutes. So they're within, 25 degrees of a conjunction. So we're definitely getting some stuff around, reality being dissolved. There's something about dreams and visions and reality, bringing our dreams into reality, dissolving reality into more of a dreamlike state. And the moon and how we feel about those things that we're trying to create and to form, we have some sort of adjustment here. It can feel really cranky and it can feel very anxious, right? And it can feel like we have to make this choice and it has to be done really quick. Not a great time necessarily to make any deliberate choices, but I definitely think we need to kind of go with the flow. At 8:45 a.m., we get Moon square Pluto. Moon square Pluto, especially with from a modern term, the moon is squaring its ruler, and in fixed signs, there is a confrontation, a deep, internal, intense, um, psychological confrontation that we're having to do. And whenever we have the moon coming on to or making an aspect with a larger planet, right? The larger planet is asking the moon to do something. And so the moon is being asked to go deeper, as if the moon in Scorpio couldn't go much deeper than what it can already. It's already feeling pretty intense. So this particular period of time in the morning, I think, feels very intense, very critical. And whatever comes up at that time, try to go kind of deep into the feeling nature in order to eliminate something. You figure out what doesn't actually serve you. Moon in Scorpio, Scorpio has to do with the sign. It's a sign of elimination. At 2:06 p.m., we do get, I think, hopefully a vibe shift, or at least like a lightening of the emotional load and a little bit of a pleasant hit or an intuitive psychic hit, because we have a trine to Jupiter in Cancer. Now, again, I don't think this is going to be a full pleasant aspect because Jupiter is still very much combust, so it's not giving its full blessing to the moon. But hopefully, whatever work we did in the hours before, now we feel a little bit lighter, we feel a little bit more intuitive, we feel a little bit more psychic, and we feel a little bit more pleasant. Fingers crossed. 9:28 p.m. we get the moon square Mercury. This can be a little bit of a cranky aspect, right? Um, there could be some sort of like egoic thing coming up. There could feel like we need to change our mind about something. There could also be something around a confrontation, a verbal confrontation that we have that makes us not feel so great. And then at 11:19 p.m., when, a lot of the world is at least trying to tuck itself into bed, we get moon sextile Mars. This is going to be at the 10th degree, so 10 Scorpio, 10 Virgo. And I think that this sextile, well, one, it's a working sextile. You want to get some stuff done. I think that if we wanted to use moon sextile Mars in a productive way, it's a time to kind of like get it on. Our drive, our sexual drive is enhanced. However, Mars is in Virgo. Moon doesn't necessarily like being in Virgo. The moon is in a sign that it's in its fall. So this can feel, I don't know, like if you're into like the kinky stuff, I think that this is an aspect that you could utilize with, your partner or partners in order to kind of maybe work through some of the intense feelings that you had before. Um, it is an energetic aspect for the end of the day. So there could be a little bit of issue in falling asleep. July 5th, Saturday, Saturn's Day. As a reminder, we have Saturn in Aries. And I didn't mention it the day before, we did have Neptune turning retrograde. So when we have a big outer planet really kind of stationary in the sky, having just gone retrograde or stationing to go retrograde or direct, we have an intensification of whatever that planet's significations are. And so I think that our dreams and visions kind of become like overblown. We become very aware of them, and now we have a time to kind of revise that as Neptune goes retrograde. 6:29 a.m. the moon is going to trine the sun. Watery, intuitive signs, right? Feeling, emoting. This is an emotional trine. And the void, of course, is going to begin. So, again, don't start anything brand new. The rest of the day, we have some very cranky aspects from the moon to Saturn, Neptune, and Jupiter. And so I think that there's a caution to try not to overreact or to overdo or to try to overcorrect in the ways that the day might have you try to make some adjustments. And I think that this day in particular is going to maybe feel a bit intense, and we're like really feeling it, right? Because we have the moon in a water sign, we have the sun in a water sign. It's still in a sign-based conjunction to Jupiter, kind of expanding and making big these feelings. So I think that this is a time to try to sit inside of our intuitive nature, to try to understand what our dreams are, what our vision for the future is, and how we want to maybe envision our own sense of identity and purpose. But it isn't a time to necessarily take a lot of action on that. July 6th, Sunday, which is the sun's day, we have the sun in the middle degrees of Cancer, still highlighting the Cancer part of your chart. July 6th is kind of rock and rolling, I would have to say. The void, of course, is not going to end until 3:06 p.m. But in the morning, we do have Venus sextiling both Saturn and Neptune. So I think that there could be some new ideas around the dream and structures that we're trying to hold, that also have to do with maybe some aesthetic purposes. I feel like this sextile is particularly creative, with the signs being Gemini and Aries. There's some social, playful action to it. There could also just be something more communicative. Perhaps, you have some sort of vision about, or dream, or idea, right, around how you want to go forward in a new flirty way, and taking the steps to kind of bring some sort of mm, solidity to it, to kind of set up its foundation. But we're not quite there yet, right? Because the moon is still void of course. We can't necessarily like fully dig into it yet. I think the energy feels a bit dreamy with that Neptune contact specifically, and kind of like maybe we're reaching into the past ideas about how we want to go forward. We have Moon in conjunct Chiron, and that's going to be around 8:55 a.m. So again, this can be some sensitivity, a sudden kind of ow, sharp. And we do still have that moon in Scorpio. So both the moon in Scorpio and Chiron in Aries have to do with Mars in Virgo, because they're both ruled by that Mars and Virgo around the work that we can do, the way that we can be of service, we can atone, the way that we can try to perfect. And so maybe there's some sort of deeper realization around the wound that we carry, and therefore the work that we can do in order to work on that, literally to just work on fixing that. Fix is a very Virgo word. Virgos love to be the fixers. Later on in the day, let's see, 3:04 p.m., we have the moon opposing Uranus. And this could be some sort of sudden shock, sudden change in our habit. This is both both planets, the moon and Uranus, are in that last degree, right? This is a culmination point for the moon in Scorpio to go, okay, I need to change that. I need to suddenly change this. I need to drop that habit. I need to like liberate myself from whatever way that I've been like punishing either myself or others, or, manipulating myself into feeling, so intensely or anything like that. It could also just be, something outside of ourselves is kind of shocking to the system. The moon is then going to move into Sagittarius, lightening the load. So I think that there's some sort of like shock, realization, emotional liberation point here. And then the moon goes into Sag and says, okay, I understand what that was. I can kind of wax poetic about it. And now I'm just going to try to feel better about it. I'm going to, be freedom seeking, philosophizing, maybe a little bit more adventurous emotionally. I love when the moon goes from Scorpio into Sag, because for me personally, I can really feel the vibe shift. And I think collectively we will very much feel the vibe shift in that moment. After that, let's go into the evening, 6:53 and 7:26. So pretty short, within a half an hour or so, we have the moon trine Saturn and the moon trine Neptune. These are kind of, it's more of a stabilization of energy and of the dream. I think this is very kind of psychic, intuitive, being able to kind of feel into our own sense of authority. This is a passionate trine, with it being in fire signs, right? With the moon in Sag and Neptune and Saturn being in Aries. There's something about freedom here. And maybe this is a time where we're feeling a little bit emotionally free to be. Free to be. Um, so this is a nice kind of, it's like an intuitively, being intuitively grounded within that energy. So we're not in the earth by any means, but we are kind of like psychically able to like hold there, feel passionate, and also kind of understanding that this is real, this is true almost, even though it's Neptune, right? So there is no real with Neptune. It is all a vision, it is all a dream. And maybe this is the ability to kind of psychically know how to make our dreams into a reality. At 8:37 p.m., we get the moon opposite Venus. There is a caution here not to go overboard in the ways that we try to indulge the senses, because we have the moon in Sagittarius and Venus in Gemini. Sorry, brain glitch. There could be like a need to kind of overthink and analyze or open so many tabs to kind of try to feed this need, like trying to find a way into comfort through information and through visions and philosophies and teachings and wisdoms, when reality is like our comfort and safety lies within just like being still and being ourselves. When we have the moon opposite Venus, it really can, it can both be a pleasant aspect, but there's always a caution not to overindulge in whatever ways that you would be overindulging at that point. And then very late in the night, not very late, 9:05 p.m. So this is right after we get the moon sextile Pluto. I think there's a deeper understanding of the ways that we feel. I think there is an ability to go a little bit deeper than a moon in Sag would want to. I think that there is something around, goals and visions for the future and how we want to connect with community while also remaining and retaining our sense of freedom. When the moon comes into a soft contact with Pluto, it just really is an invitation to kind of like let go and eliminate and to go deeper without it feeling so critical and crucial, and intense. So there is an intensity of feeling, but we are able to be kind of comfortable with it. It's kind of like if you were to press a bruise and it feels more good than very sharp and painful. July 7th, Monday, is the moon's day, and we have the moon still in Sag, freedom loving Sagittarius, and we have at 1:43 a.m. Venus trine Pluto. I love Venus trine Pluto personally. I like when Venus has soft contacts to Pluto because it like the love nature, the desire nature, the ways that we feel safe and secure in relationships gets deeper, more intense. There's an intensity to it. Can you tell I have Venus trine Pluto in my in my nativity? So the themes around Venusian topics get more intensified, but not necessarily in a negative way. I think that the desire to like connect cerebrally to other people in relationship intensifies at this time, and to a certain extent, there could be, I don't know, something around. Mm, Something around beautification that changes for us as well. Big thing today, though, is that Uranus goes into Gemini. So this is the whammy of the whole week, the whole month, really, of July is Uranus's ingress into Gemini. We're going to see Uranus, I think, behaving in a better way. I think it really, really loves being in Gemini. It really loves to rapidly shift and change and transform and liberate new ways of communicating. There's going to be stuff around transportation. There's going to be the ways that we think, the ways that we speak, the ways that we communicate are going to undergo a series of technological shifts, Uranus, over the next 7 years that Uranus is going to be in this sign. And as soon as, Uranus goes into Gemini, it's going to start receiving a trine from Pluto, which is just going to kind of intensify. Wow. And I think also more rapidly transform these ways, right? I think that there's going to be a lot of shifts in social media, Uranus and platform Uranus things, and also Pluto things that have to do with like our larger collective, and both of them being in communication signs, right? I think that there's going to be ways that we travel is going to undergo significant change. There's going to probably be new types of cars and new types of flying devices. Uranus rules over odd flying vehicles. I think that this is a potential time if we want to just like stick on our cute ship tinfoil hats, that this time in particular, as Uranus is in Gemini, we have a potential for aliens and extraterrestrials to probably come far more into the forefront of what we're talking about in the news, is going to probably intensify as well. So Uranus and Gemini, we're going to continue to talk about it as we go forward because it has a lot of things going on with it. As soon as it goes into Gemini as well, it is sextiling Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Again, I think that there is something about sudden changes in how we communicate about our dreams and visions, and how we communicate this sorts of foundations we're trying to set up, and the new reality. I think this has to do with a new reality coming into the fold in very different ways than we probably would have envisioned. I think that there is, something very important happening with this minor talent trine around Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune and Pluto that is going to be playing out over the next months, that have to do with, the intensity and our social structures, our governmental structures, the dream that we all hold and want to be, things around pioneering, things around communication, things around transportation. I think that with Uranus's ingress into Gemini, we've entered a whole new world, because how we communicate is how we connect, right? So there'll be a lot more about that as we go forward. The void, of course, is going to begin on July 7th at 2:29 p.m. with a square to Mars. So at that period of time in the afternoon, we might be feeling kind of hyphy, a bit irritated, a bit cranky, around the things that we want to do, the goals that we have, and the work that we're doing, the sorts of perfecting ways that we are going about our day, the ways that our desires are kind of being expressed are not necessarily jiving with the sense of like freedom that we are trying to have. So it can create just crankiness. So if you're feeling cranky in the afternoon, chill out, do a moon and Sag thing, like go read a book about Buddhism. Go try to like connect with God, or use that dynamic mutable square to like be of service to the greater good. No anger. Try. We have some cranky aspects. After that, we have the moon sesqui square Chiron, and then Mars sesqui square Chiron, holding that afternoon and into the evening. So I think that, again, this just kind of exacerbates the way that we're feeling like cranky, out of sorts, angry, hurt. Just be cautious. 11:28 p.m. we have the moon quincunx the sun. I think this is just like anxiety and not feeling very comfortable, right? Because we have the moon in Sag and then we have the sun in Cancer. The sun in Cancer just wants to feel comfortable and safe and secure, and the moon in Sag wants to be free. It wants to adventure. This is a very outside sign, and Cancer is a very much inside sign. And so when you have these two kind of competing desires or goals, you just feel out of sorts. So if you feel pretty cranky, pretty out of sorts all through the day, especially after 2:30 p.m., just know that you will have the ability to talk about it because you'll have the moon trine Mercury earlier on in the day. But then we just kind of get into a very frustrated kind of nature. So just kind of hold on through the 7th, through Monday. Uh, Everybody's going to have a case of the Mondays, I think. Tuesday, July 8th, is Mars's day. And Mars is creeping up on the south node, which is going to start to create some, I think, some pretty big instability as we go on into the next week, which I will be talking about starting tomorrow. But Mars is in Virgo, still in a very hardworking, precise kind of sign. When I think about Mars in Virgo, I think about like the surgeon, right? The general practitioner, uh, the person who puts all of their action into doing for others, even for atoning or just trying to perfect. For July 8th, we need to know that the moon is going to be void of course all day. So again, trying not to establish anything very, very, very new. Do the things that you need to do in your day, certainly. We can't just check out of life because the moon is void, right? But we can know that it is a time for reflecting, for daydreaming, for processing, right? And we did have, a pretty big day before with Uranus going into Gemini. We have the moon trine Chiron in the evening, which I think can speak to our ability to feel a little bit more empathetic and healing towards others and also towards ourselves. So, in this kind of introspective day, I think there's an invitation to do some inner work here. But we do have about an hour later, the moon sesqui-square Mercury. I think this is like we are trying to do the inner work, but we can't quite communicate all of the ways that maybe we need help or to be considered or just all of the work that we need to do. The day doesn't have a lot of aspects, so that's something to keep in mind. The void, of course, is going to last until tomorrow when the moon enters Capricorn, but I will be back to speak about that on Wednesday. So take care, y'all. Not every aspect has to be big in the sky for it to be big in your life. And not every big aspect is going to hit you personally, but it is going to hit all of us collectively. So I think it's always just nice to think to ourselves that the sensationalism of what astrology can be, I think, is often taken out of context, and that we should look at astrology as a tool to help us kind of ride out the bumpy spots and to learn when learning is offered and to grow always, always, always. And sometimes to just hold on through the bumpy spots. So, all right. I'm available for readings. I hope I will get to speak to some of you, and take care of yourselves. Hey, thank you for listening to today's Astro weather with me. I'm Sydney. As a reminder, I'm always open to seeing both new and my beloved returning clients. My website is ddastrology.com, that is D as in dog, D as in dog, astrology.com, to check me out and just click the email buttons in order to schedule with me. If you're into a more conversational feel with your podcast and content, I have a podcast called BS Astrology with my fellow Mercurial Mommy Bender, and we put out episodes every Sunday for the week. Just search BS Astrology on YouTube or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcast, including Spotify, Audible, and more. Have a good day.